Hello, this is Mr. Colsey, the Library Media Specialist at Lacey Township High School, and I'm ecstatic to present this year's summer reading list for students entering 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades in September. This list was put together by the members of the Student Reading Committee, which is made up of 27 students, in addition to teachers, parents, and community representatives. After reading and reviewing more than 100 books, the Student Reading Committee recommends these 56 books for their high interest and readability. I would also like to thank the Lacey Township High School PTSA for its generous contributions in helping the Student Reading Committee continue this important reading program throughout the school year. In addition to this presentation, you'll be able to get more information about the list on our high school homepage. Look for the Students link and then Summer Reading. Please be sure to read the brochure for more detailed information before choosing your book or books. Students who read a book or books from the list will be given extra credit from their 2018-19 ELA teachers upon completing a reading response form for each book they've read. Honors, academies, and AP students will have separate requirements and are encouraged to check the website for details.
13 Days of Midnight by Leo Hunt. When Luke Manchet's estranged father dies unexpectedly, he leaves his son a dark inheritance, a host of 8 unique, powerful, and restless spirits. Unfortunately, Luke has no clue how to manage them. With the help of school outcast Elsa Moss, who knows a bit about ghosts herself, Luke has just 13 days to uncover the closely guarded secrets of black magic and send his unique spirits to eternal rest. Paranormal Fantasy, grades 9 and 10.
Saint Anything by Sarah Dessen. Peyton hit a kid on a bike and Sydney is trying to cope with her brother being in jail. Sydney moves to a new school and explores new friendships and hobbies. She explores romance and experiences feeling unsafe around one of her brother's creepy friends. Realistic fiction, grades 9 through 12. Murder Beyond the Grave by James Patterson. Murder Beyond the Grave has 2 thrilling true crime stories. The first story is Murder Beyond the Grave. Stephen Small is kidnapped and buried alive in a coffin-like contraption that will provide only 48 hours worth of oxygen, more than enough time for his family to pay the ransom. Can the FBI get to the kidnapper in time before the 48 hours run out? The second story is Murder in Paradise. Bonnie always dreamed of one day owning a resort, away from the city. Her husband begrudgingly agrees with her plan to buy Camp Nelson, but a mysterious person wants her out. After the threats fail to chase her away, Bonnie is murdered. You'll be guessing who did it throughout the whole story. True crime, grades 10 through 12.
Midwinter Blood by Marcus Segwood. In a novel comprising of 7 parts each, influenced by a moon, the flower moon, the harvest moon, the hunter's moon, and the blood moon. This is the story of Eric and Meryl, whose souls have been searching for each other since their untimely parting. Fantasy, mystery, magical realism, grades 9 through 12.
Terror in the City of Champions by Tom Stanton. True crime history. During the Great Depression, Detroit was home to champion teams in baseball, football, hockey, and was home to the great boxer Joe Louis. Detroit was also home to the sinister Black Legion, a secret society akin to the KKK. Could there have been a connection between this terrorist group and Detroit's renowned sports heroes? Sports, business, murder, racism, and sports converge in this fascinating book. Grades 10 through 12. The Brain, The Story of You by David Eagleman. Join renowned neuroscientist David Eagleman for a journey into the questions at the mysterious heart of our existence. What is reality? Who are you? How do you make decisions? Why does your brain need other people? How is technology poised to change what it means to be a human? In the course of his investigations, Eagleman guides us through the world of extreme sports, criminal justice, facial expressions, genocide, brain surgery, gut feelings, robotics, and the search for immortality. Strap in for a whistle-stop tour into the inner cosmos. Science, psychology, biology, grades 10 through 12.
Martin Eden by Jack London. The semi-autobiographical Martin Eden is the most vital and original character Jack London ever created. Set in San Francisco, this is the story of Martin Eden, an impoverished seaman who pursues obsessively and aggressively dreams of education and literary fame. Classic novel recommended for grade 11.
Locke and Maury by Heather Petty. This book takes a twist of the classic Sherlock Holmes. Locke, aka Sherlock Holmes, and James Moriarty, aka Maury, a female in this case, are two high school students with a knack for solving crimes. When a string of crimes evolves in the town park of London, Locke is intrigued and asks Maury if she would be interested in playing a game with him. Mystery thriller, recommended for grades 9 through 12.
The Boys Who Challenged Hitler by Philip Huss. In 1940, Denmark surrendered to the Nazis without a fight. However, teenager Knud Petersen and his Churchill Club refused to give up. They committed acts of sabotage against the occupying Nazi soldiers. As word got out about the brave acts done by these teens, more and more Danes began to resist the Nazi invaders. History, biography, recommended for students entering grades 9 and 10.
Evicted by Matthew Desmond. Based on years of embedded fieldwork and painstakingly gathered data, this masterful book transforms our understanding of extreme poverty and economic exploitation while providing fresh ideas for solving a devastating, uniquely American problem. Its unforgettable scenes of hope and loss remind us of the centrality of home, without which nothing else is possible. Sociology, history, politics, grades 11 and 12.
Never Caught by Erica Armstrong Dunbar. Nonfiction. This is the true story of a runaway slave, Ona Judge. She worked for the Washingtons in the executive mansion. Ona escaped and lived another 50 years as a free woman, even though she had a very difficult life. Excellent portrait of 18th century colonial life. If you like American history, you will enjoy this book. The details of George and Martha Washington's lives are also examined, as well as the hardships faced back then by everyone. History, grades 10 through 12.
The Accident Season by Moira Fowley Doyle. Every October, Kara and her family become mysteriously and dangerously accident-prone, but this year, the year Kara and her ex-stepbrother and her best friend are 17, is when Kara will begin to unravel the accident season's dark origins. Fantasy, recommended for grades 10 to 12.
Silas Marner by George Eliot. Wrongly accused of theft and exiled from a religious community many years before, the embittered weaver Silas Marner lives alone in Ravenlow, living only for work and his precious hoard of money. But when his money is stolen and an orphan child finds her way into his house, Silas is given the chance to transform his life. Classic novel, grade 12.
442 by Dean Hughes. Yuki is a Japanese American who wants to fight for his country during World War II to prove his patriotism, despite the fact that he and other Japanese Americans have been treated as second-class citizens. He joins the 442nd Regiment, a segregated regiment of Japanese American soldiers who fought throughout Europe during the war, like so many Nisei did during that time. Historical fiction, war, grades 9 and 10.
Allegedly, by Tiffany Jackson. Mary killed a baby when she was only 9 years old. Now she's about to become a mother herself while living in a group home, but authorities reviewing her case think she may have been wrongly convicted. Realistic fiction, teen pregnancy, LGBT, recommended for grades 11 and 12.
Complicit by Stephanie Kuhn. Jamie's mother was murdered when he was 6. About 7 years later, his sister Kate was incarcerated for burning down a neighbor's barn. And now Jamie, 15, learns that Kate has been released and is coming back for him, blaming him for all the bad things that led to her arrest. Mystery and thriller, all grades.
Conviction by Kelly Gilbert. 10 years ago, God gave Braden a sign, a promise that his family wouldn't fall apart the way he feared. But Braden got it wrong. His older brother, Trey, has been estranged from the family for almost as long, and his father, the only parent Braden has ever known, has been accused of murder. The arrest of Braden's father, a well-known Christian radio host, has sparked national media attention. His fate lies in his son's hands. Braden is the key witness in the upcoming trial. Braden faces an impossible choice, one that will define him for the rest of his life, in this brutally honest debut novel about family, faith, and the ultimate test of conviction. Mystery, thriller, mature readers, recommended for students entering grade 12.
Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Raskolnikov, an impoverished student living in the St. Petersburg of the Tsars, is determined to overreach his humanity and assert his untrammeled individual will. When he commits an act of murder and theft, he sets into motion a story that, for its excruciating suspense, its atmospheric vividness, and its depth of characterization and vision is almost unequaled in the literatures of the world. Classics, grades 10 through 12.
Dr. Faustus by Christopher Marlowe. Dr. Faustus wants it all. He's willing to sell his soul to the devil in return for earthly knowledge and power. This dramatization of the Faust story was Christopher Marlowe's warning to those who only seek earthly things. Drama, grade 12.
Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. A profoundly moving story of family, history, and the meaning of home. Everything I Never Told You is both a page-turner and a sensitive family portrait, exploring the divisions between cultures and the rifts between a family, and uncovering the ways in which mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, and husbands and wives struggle all their lives to understand each other. Realistic fiction, mature readers, grades 11 to 12.
Far from the Tree by Robin Benway. Only child Grace was adopted at birth. When she finds herself placing her own daughter up for adoption, she begins searching for the bio family she's never known. She quickly discovers that she is a middle child, sandwiched between loudmouth younger sister Maya and older brother Joaquin, who has spent nearly his entire life in the foster care system. As Grace struggles to move forward from the loss of her daughter, she begins to bond with her siblings who have hardships of their own. Maya's adoptive family is not as picture-perfect as they seem, and Joaquin is on the cusp of something wonderful, but is afraid it could all end in disaster. The siblings find themselves turning to one another and learning that family comes in many forms. Grades 10 through 12, realistic fiction, teen pregnancy, LGBT.
The Fixer by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. When her grandfather develops dementia, 16-year-old Tess, who's been keeping his Montana ranch going, is whisked away to Washington, D.C. by a sister she barely knows, and thrown into a world of politics, power, wealth, love triangles, and family secrets. Thriller, mystery, grades 9 through 12.
Get Well Soon by Jennifer Wright. Throughout time, humans have been terrified and fascinated by the plagues they've suffered from. Get Well Soon delivers the gruesome, morbid details of some of the worst plagues in human history, as well as stories of the heroic figures who fought to ease their suffering. With her signature mix of in-depth research and upbeat storytelling, and a lot of dark humor, Jennifer Wright explores history's most gripping and deadly outbreaks. Recommended for grades 10 to 12, mature readers, history and science.
Guitar Notes by Mary Amato. A shy guy and a popular girl who both play instruments start to leave notes for each other in the practice room that they use, and eventually a friendship is developed. Despite the circumstances, they find ways to talk to each other. The characters are relatable, and they were adorable. Recommended for grade 9, romance, realistic fiction.
Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. In this autobiography, memoir, J.D. Vance tells his story to his former neighbors, and especially to young people. Vance had a rough time growing up in Ohio, having to contend with a neglectful, abusive mother and survive by his own wits. Along his path toward adulthood, he always had people he could rely on to help him weather whatever storm he was experiencing so he could be the successful man he is today. Grades 11 and 12, memoir.
I Crawl Through It by A.S. King. 4 talented teenagers are traumatized coping with grief, surviving date rape, facing the anxiety of standardized tests, and the neglect of self-absorbed adults, and they'll do anything to escape the pressure. They'll even build an invisible helicopter to fly far away to a place where everyone will understand them, until they learn the only way to escape reality is to face it head-on. Magical realism, recommended for grades 10 through 12.
The Invisible Life of Ivan Asenko by Scott Stambach. This is the witty tale of 17-year-old Ivan Asenko's lifelong stay at Mazar Hospital for Gravely Ill Children in Belarus, Russia. Ivan was severely deformed at birth with only one arm with 3 fingers and nubs for the rest of his appendages. He is confined to a wheelchair and was abandoned at birth, so he never met his parents, and he has lived at this hospital all his life. His extremely bright intellect makes up for his lack of body, and he manipulates and pranks the staff and children at the hospital for his own amusement. He has never met another patient as smart or mentally stable than him until Polina comes. Polina is a leukemia patient on the verge of death, but that doesn't stop Ivan from being drawn to her alluring persona. After Polina passes, Ivan is devastated, and this book is his written account of the whole endeavor. Recommended for grades 11 and 12, romance, mature readers. Last of the Giants by Jeff Campbell. This book is about what the author Jeff Campbell calls giant species, or species that no longer dominate ecosystems and food chains. Furthermore, he has a section on each of the 13 species he deemed giant. He discusses each one in depth, talking about the basics like habitat, behaviors, and diet, and about the species from an evolutionary standpoint. In addition, Campbell offers snippets of information on the species' relationship with humans, predators, and prey. All in all, the book is a comprehensive piece of literature on a unique topic that allows the author to give a variety of interesting facts and stories to the reader. Science and history, all grades. Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. Driven by the secrets and vengeance that mark his street culture, 15-year-old Will contemplates over the course of 60 psychological suspenseful seconds whether or not he is going to murder the person who killed his brother. Grades 9 through 12, poetry, realistic fiction.
Murders by Anthony Horowitz. When editor Susan Ryland is given the manuscript of Alan Conway's latest novel, she has no reason to think it would be much different from any of his others. After working with the best-selling crime writer for years, she's intimately familiar with his fictional detective Atticus Pound, who solves mysteries disturbing sleepy English villages, and homage to queens of classic British crime such as Agatha Christie and Dorothy Sayers. Alan's traditional formula has proved hugely successful, so successful that Susan must continue to put up with his troubling behavior if she wants to keep her job. Conway's latest tale has bodies and a host of intriguing suspects, but the more Susan reads, the more she's convinced that there is another story hidden in the pages of the manuscript. One of real-life jealousy, greed, ruthless ambition, and murder. Mystery grades 11 through 12.
Narco History by Carmen Belosa and Mike Wallace. The authors discuss key events that affected the drug industry and drug trade between the U.S. and Mexico, and the political, economic, social, and historical influences surrounding them. History, criminology, law enforcement, grades 11 to 12.
The One Memory of Flora Banks by Emily Barr. Flora Banks is a 17-year-old girl who has a brain disorder that prevents her from being able to make new memories. One night, she kisses her best friend's boyfriend, Drake, and everything goes downhill from there. Drake and Flora end up forming quite the relationship, but when Drake suggests that Flora should come to the Arctic to see him, she must learn how to be brave to overcome her disability. Realistic fiction, grades 9 through 12.
One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. 5 students are placed in detention. One of them suddenly dies. The other 4 are now suspects in a murder. No one knows which one of them is lying. The book follows the 4 characters as they try to figure out exactly who the murderer is. Mystery thriller, grades 9 through 12.
Pasadena by Sherry Smith. It starts off with Jude discovering that her best friend Maggie was found dead in a swimming pool. There are all different theories about what happened. Some believe it was an accident, others believe it was suicide. However, Jude believes that it was murder. The book deals with Jude hunting down her murderer and discovering clues. It also deals with her discovering a lot about herself and about her past. History, thriller, grades 11 to 12.
Why Soccer Matters by Pele. For the first time ever, Pele explores the recent history of the game and provides new insights into soccer, role connecting and galvanizing players around the world. He has traveled the world as a global ambassador for soccer and in support of charitable organizations such as UNICEF, promoting the positive influences of soccer can have to transform young men and women struggling communities, even entire nations. In groundbreaking detail and with unparalleled openness, he shares his most inspiring experiences, heartwarming stories, and hard-won wisdom.
Prisoner B3087 by Alan Gratz. Based on the life of Jack Gruner, this book relates his story of survival from the Nazi occupation of Krakow when he was 11 through a succession of concentration camps to the final liberation of Dachau. Grades 9 through 10, historical fiction, Holocaust fiction.
Scythe by Neil Schusterman. This is a dystopian story about a world where disease and famine is gone and everyone lives forever. So the world doesn't get overpopulated, people called scythes are allowed to kill people. Science fiction, grades 9 through 12.
Serpent King by Jeff Zentner. This book follows 3 teenage friends in a small town. One of them, Dill, comes from a family that values faith and loyalty, perhaps too much considering his Pentecostal minister father has been arrested for child porn and they are deeply in debt. The other two friends are Travis, an avid reader of fantasy books who thinks he has found his soulmate online, and Lydia, a fashion blogger ready to start a life somewhere else. They each struggle to find their way into adult life. Lydia tries to convince Dill to go to college, but he refuses since it will upset his mother. Then, someone is shot and killed. This event causes changes for the others. Realistic fiction, recommended for grades 9 through 12.
6 of Crows by Lee Bardugo. 6 young men and women are on the heist of a lifetime. Ketterdam, a bustling hub of international trade where anything can be had for the right price, and no one knows that better than the criminal prodigy Kaz Brecker. Kaz is offered a chance at a deadly heist that could make him rich beyond his wildest dreams, but he can't pull it off alone. Grades 10 through 12.
Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. 16-year-old Asa never intended to pursue the mystery of a fugitive billionaire, but with a $100,000 award out there, her best friend is eager to investigate. Being a good daughter, friend, and student, and maybe even a good detective, is not so easy, as Asa lives with the ever-tightening spiral of her own thoughts. Realistic fiction, grades 9 through 12.
Unlikely Warrior by George Rausch. George Rausch is a 19-year-old quarter Jew living a beautiful life in Vienna when he is drafted into World War II to fight in Hitler's army. The book tells the story of a scared yet humorous young adult finding a way to survive in a war he doesn't want. The sarcastic humor is relatable, and the emotional language will tug at your heartstrings.
The Arsonist by Stephanie Oakes. Molly Mavity and Pepper Youssef are dealing with their own personal tragedies when they are tasked by an anonymous person with solving the decades-old murder of Ava Dreiman, an East German teenager whose diary was published after her death. Mystery, grades 9 and 10.
Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson. What is the nature of space and time? How do we fit within the universe? How does the universe fit within us? There's no better guide through these mind-expanding questions than acclaimed astrophysicist and best-selling author Neil deGrasse Tyson. But today, few of us have time to contemplate the cosmos, so Tyson brings the universe down to earth succinctly and clearly, with sparkling wit, in tasty chapters consumable anytime and anywhere in your busy day. While you wait for your morning coffee to brew, wait for the bus, the train, or a plane to arrive, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry will reveal just what you need to be fluent and ready for the next cosmic headlines. From the Big Bang to black holes, from quarks to quantum mechanics, and from the search for planets to the search for life in the universe, all students interested in learning about the universe.
Because You'll Never Meet Me by Leah Thomas. Ollie, who has seizures when near electricity, lives in a backwoods cabin with his mother and rarely sees other people. And Moritz, born with no eyes, and a heart defect that requires a pacemaker, is bullied at his high school. But when a physician who knows both suggests they begin corresponding, they form a strong bond that may get them through dark times. Science fiction, grades 9 through 11. Blood, Sweat, and Pixels by Jason Schreier. Documenting the round-the-clock crunches, buggy-eyed burnout, and last-minute saves, Blood, Sweat, and Pixels is a journey through development hell, and ultimately a tribute to the dedicated diehards and unsung heroes who scale mountains of obstacles in their quests to create the best games imaginable. Gaming Business, grades 11 and 12.
Bone Gap by Laura Ruby. 18-year-old Finn, an outsider in his quiet Midwestern town, is the only witness to the abduction of town favorite Rosa, but his inability to distinguish between faces makes it difficult for him to help with the investigation, and subjects him to even more ridicule and bullying. Magical realism, fantasy, grades 10 to 12.
Afterward by Jennifer Matthew. When Dylan Anderson is kidnapped, his subsequent rescue leads to the discovery of Ethan Georgeson, who had disappeared 4 years ago. And now Dylan's sister Caroline, best friends with Ethan, wants to learn the truth about her autistic brother's captivity. Mystery, realistic fiction, grades 10 and 11.
Alex and Eliza by Melissa de la Cruz. It's 1777 and the American Revolution is happening. Eliza would rather be out helping the American colonists than attending her parents' party, but when she meets the mysterious Alexander Hamilton, her life changes. Historical fiction, romance, grades 9 through 12.
The Amateurs by Sarah Shepard. 5 years ago, Helena Kelly disappeared and was later found dead. Her younger sister, Erin, is haunted by this because she was the last one to see Helena. But Erin does not seem to want the case to be resolved. Can true crime enthusiast Seneca Fraser and her friends solve the murder? Mystery, recommended for grades 10 through 12.
And Then You're Dead by Cody Cassidy. A gleefully gruesome look at the actual science behind the most outlandish, cartoonish, and impossible deaths you can imagine. What would happen if you took a swim outside a deep-sea submarine wearing only a swimsuit? How long could you last if you stood on the surface of the sun? How far could you actually get in digging a hole to China? Paul Doherty, senior staff scientist at San Francisco's famed Exploratorium Museum, and writer Cody Cassidy explore the real science behind these and other fantastical scenarios, offering insights into physics, astronomy, anatomy, and more along the way. Science, humor, all grades.
Animal Farm by George Orwell. What is it like to live in a society where the government controls your actions and thoughts? George Orwell's satire about farm animals overthrowing their owner and starting a new government is a warning to all people who surrender their individuality and rights. Fantasy, dystopia, classics, grade 9, Lexile of 1120.
Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson. Running into a long-ago friend sets memories from the 1970s in motion for August, transporting her to a time and a place where friendship was everything until it wasn't. For August and her girls showing confidences as they ambled through neighborhood streets, Brooklyn was a place where they believed that they were beautiful, talented, brilliant, a part of a future that belonged to them. But beneath the hopeful veneer, there was another Brooklyn. Historical fiction, mature readers in grades 11 and 12.
Every Exquisite Thing by Matthew Quick. Nanette O'Hare, a star student and athlete, is given a mysterious, out-of-print, cult classic novel by her beloved teacher that sparks the rebel within her. But as she befriends the reclusive author and attempts to insert her true self into the world with wild abandon, Nanette learns the hard way that sometimes rebellion comes at a high price. Realistic fiction, grades 10 through 12. The 57 Bus by Dashka Slater. If it weren't for the 57 bus, Sasha and Richard never would have met. Both were high school students from Oakland, California, one of the most diverse cities in the country. But one afternoon on the bus ride home from school, a single reckless act left Sasha severely burned, and Richard charged with 2 hate crimes and facing life imprisonment. LGBT biography, recommended for all grades.
The Weight of Feathers by Anna Marie McLemore. For 20 years, the Palamas and the Curbos have been rivals and enemies, locked in an escalating feud for over a generation. Both families make their living as traveling performers in competing shows. The Palamas swimming in mermaid exhibitions, and the Curbos former tightrope walkers performing in the tallest trees they can find. Lace Paloma may be new to her family's show, but she knows as well as anyone that the Curbos are pure magia negra, black magic from the devil himself. Simply touching one could mean death, and she's been taught from birth to keep away. But when disaster strikes the small town where both families are performing, it's a Curbo boy, Cluck, who saves Lace's life, and his touch immerses her in a world of Curbos, where falling for him could turn his own family against him, and one misstep can be just as dangerous on the ground as it is in the trees. Magical realism, fantasy, grades 9 through 12.
We Love You, Charlie Freeman by Caitlin Greenidge. The Freeman family, Charles, Laurel, and their daughters, teenage Charlotte and 9-year-old Callie, have been invited to the Tony B. Institute to participate in a research experiment. They will live in an apartment on campus with Charlie, a young chimp abandoned by his mother. The Freemans were selected because they know sign language. They are supposed to teach it to Charlie and welcome him as a member of their family. But when Charlotte discovers the truth about the Institute's history of questionable studies, the secrets of the past invade the present in devious ways. Historical fiction, literary fiction, grades 10 to 12, confident readers.